report card. The type of report card that you use at an LEA is your choice. You can choose to do a traditional report card for high school and a standard-based report card at the elementary and middle grade level. You can decide just to do standard-based at the elementary level if that's what you would like to do, or you could do standard-based for all or traditional for all. Again, it's an LEA decision. It's based on your grading practices and how best you want to communicate academic performance with your parents. One of the things that's really key when you're thinking about grading and when you decide what you're going to do, especially if you're going to do the standard-based report card, is knowing your standards-based grading scale and what that is so that you can communicate that to your teachers. The standard-based grading scale is something that you're going to have to use and develop locally. We're not developing that at the state level, so that's something that will be a local decision. It is something that you'll have to communicate to your districts. So if the district or a teacher asks us if standard-based grading is what is happening in your particular district, we're going to point them back to you. Collaboration is going to be important in order for this to be successful. Curriculum and instruction understand standards-based grading and the importance of it and can communicate that information to the teachers. They can set up the scales, but in order for it to work in PowerSchool, the PowerSchool staff have to be involved. And it's important that you're together, especially when you're testing and previewing what your teachers will see in their grade book. It's really important that you do that together. This is an example of a standards grading scale. As you can see here with the labels, they are alphabets. So you have an E, an S, an M, and a T, and then there's a description for each one. So the teacher is in their grade book, and they are actually grading their students. They can actually use these labels if that is something that your district decided to do. Again, this is just an example, just for illustrative purposes. This is not the scale that we're asking folks to use out in the field. This is the same scale using numeric grades, so you don't have to use alphabets for your labels. You can actually use something like a number. So you have a 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Again, it's the same type of scale. But you can actually have a 1 be the highest, or you can have the 4 be the highest. Again, that's totally up to the district. This is another example, and the reason this example was included is because it's written a little bit differently, and it's written from the student perspective. So you can see there where it has I can statements, or I can't in some cases. And you'll also see with the label, it has a decimal. So it just shows another example of the type of scale that your district could decide to use for standards-based grading. So some important decisions that the district needs to make. Some of these decisions are which standards need to show in the grade book for assignments and comments. So when the standards go into the grade book, teachers can actually hook assignments to those standards or hook standards to the assignments, and then also make comments about standards that are also in the grade book. Or you can decide in some cases that there are standards that can be in the teacher's grade book, but no comments should be included. So that's going to be a totally district decision, and we'll show you where those decisions can be documented in just a moment. So you also need to think about what are some important essential standards that need to be on the report card. So as you're thinking about standards-based grading, you're not only thinking about what goes in the teacher's grade book that they can use every day, but then eventually what's going to be on the report card as well. So a teacher may be grading on some standards, but those standards may roll up to higher level standards, and those are what appear on the report card, or you may decide you want all of those to be there. So those are some decisions that you're going to make along the way. Another decision that you'll have to be thinking about is, are traditional grades going to be reported for the reporting period in addition to standard reporting? Some districts will decide that they want a summary grade that is your traditional A, B, C, D, E, or F, and others will decide all they want is the standard-based grading so that they know how the student is doing with the standards. Again, that's a local decision, and you'll have to make those decisions locally. But there's some things that you need to think about. So today's webinar is really focused on the spreadsheet and how to import the spreadsheet into PowerSchool, and so then it goes over into the teacher's grade book. So the spreadsheet that you found on the web looks something like this. You have lots of columns, there's lots of information in there, and we're going to walk you through what each column means and see if you have any questions, and then we're going to show you how to import the spreadsheet into PowerSchool. So the first column you see there is name. That is the name of the standard. Then we have identifier, which is B. You see a lot of dots there. That's what we call our dot notation. You'll see list parent, which is just who is the mother or father of that particular standard. So there's different levels. You'll also see levels there, so you can kind of tell who goes with whom. Type is always going to be 4 for schools because these are standards that are going to be at the school level. You'll see a sort order, you'll see courses, you'll see the subject area, conversion scale, allow assignments, etc. And so what I'm going to do, because you can't see this very well, is really go to the next slide, because this is the slide that's really important. In column A, when you see name, we've already put in some text there for you. What we did was we took the entire description of the standard and we cut it off at 80 characters. And so if it was more than 80 characters, what we did was we actually stopped at character number 77 and added 3 dots at the end. So you'll have the text of the standard with an 80 character limit. The identifiers there, that's the dot notation that we use to identify the standard. It's very similar to the dot notation that you'll see in SchoolNet when you're searching for standards. You'll see the list parent, the level, the type, and the sort order. Those are things that you don't necessarily have to change unless you want to. The courses is the piece that you will have to change. The courses align to the standards, and the course numbers are in there for you. I'm going to go through that in just a moment, but keep in mind courses is something that you will need to change. Subject area, that's already there for you. The conversion scale, we're going to go through and talk to you about how to get the number in there for the conversion scale. Column J is allow assignments, true or false, and this is just if you want teachers to be able to have an assignment and then tag that assignment with that particular standard, you would put true or you would put false. We've already put true for all the ones that you might think are possible, but you can change some of those to false if you would like to. And then lastly, we have include comments, true or false. That's another decision that you'll have to make along with those. So in the standards, what you'll see in a moment, you'll see the standards, which you can assign to an assignment, and then also make comments about those standards. The description is the full text of the standard. That will appear in your gradebook necessarily, so you don't have to worry too much about. And then the max comment length is there as well. So when you think about the description, your teachers will know the description. The text or the name of the standard, that comes in play later when we get to the report card, because there's a limit on the report card. You can't show the entire description. Okay? So don't be so much concerned about the name that's put in there or the description at this point. The ones that we want you to think about are the courses, the conversion scale, allow assignments, allow comments, and then also your limit. Okay, course codes, column G. For each standard, the state has included a 7-digit state course code, but as you know, the last 3 digits of the course code is reserved for local use. And so what you'll have to do is go into the spreadsheet and modify the course numbers if you have added those 3 digits on there, because when you upload your spreadsheet, it's going to be looking for those specific course code numbers that you use in your district, not the ones that are just necessarily at the state level. And also in the spreadsheet, you'll have to decide if you don't want standards in a grade book aligned to those for that course, you can delete that course code altogether. So you include the course code numbers that you would like, and you also modify them as needed for district use. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the standards conversion scale. Now, we talked about some standards grading scales, and we talked about curriculum deciding what those would be. Well, once they decide, the curriculum instruction staff decide what those standards grading scales are, and they may have more than one for standards-based grading. They may have one for ELA and one for everything else, or vice versa. They may have lots of different things. And so once they decide what the grading scale is, they'll communicate that to you, but then it's up to the PowerSchool team to add those into PowerSchool, and then for all of you to test to see how that looks for the teachers. So the data managers are going to actually enter the scales into PowerSchool, and the conversion scale ID number that's generated by PowerSchool goes into column I. And so I'm going to turn this over to Rosalind Galloway in just a moment so that she can show you how to get that conversion scale ID, but I wanted to back up just a minute and go back to your spreadsheet. So in your spreadsheet, as you can see in column I, there's a number there already. It says 399. That is a generic number. That is not the number that you would use if you're going to put and upload this in for your district. And so what you have to do is you have to find the number that you're using for your particular scale for that particular standard and for that particular subject. And so if you have more than one, you might have one for science and another one for ELA, but for this particular part of the spreadsheet for science, we would go and find our conversion scale, we'd get our ID, we'd define what that was, and then put it in the spreadsheet before we uploaded it. Just to say a little bit about conversion scales, and when you're doing standards-based grading, for example, you may use some numeric value such as 95 or a 1 or 2 or 3. That's the numeric value that it would have. But if you're using a character like an M, an S, an E, you have to convert that over to a numeric value, and so that when you go in to do your conversion scale, that's what you would enter into your conversion scale. If you're doing something like a plus, a minus, again, that would be something that you would have to assign a number to, which is why we have to go in and use that conversion scale in PowerSchool. When you go into, when Roz goes in just a moment, there's going to be a type for your scale. If you're using numbers and you're not using any decimal points, that's numeric. If you're doing the alphabet, that's alphanumeric. If you're doing decimals, that's numeric with 2 decimals or maybe 1 decimal. And then if you want to customize numeric where you want some that have decimals and some that don't, you could do that as well. I'm going to turn this over to Rosalind. Well, we're changing presenters. Let's, here we go.
Okay, just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Okay, let's do it. So one of the next things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you import your spreadsheet. So we've got a little bit of setup to do. So under LEA, and I'm going to navigate there just a second. So under LEA, I'm going to go to System. I'm sorry, it's under LEA. I keep saying System. And you want to look for, here we are, the grading functions area. So here's this section. And you have to click on, you have to create conversion scales. So we're going to click on, screen is jumping, click on Standards, and then you have a conversion scale. And let me take just a moment there. I think I don't, yes, I need to bring up the PowerPoint that I had here. Pause for just a second. On the screen? Okay, off there.
Please get in here. I know it.
Okay. So again, you want to click on LEA, and then under grading functions, you want to click on the conversion scales. You can click on New, and what you're going to see here is you can create your new scale. We did a little bit of playing around with this and found you got several options here. So you can name it whatever you want to call it. And we found what's most helpful under the type, if you choose numeric and not the one with the decimal places. And then once you do that, it's going to give you a couple of options. You can see there when you choose numeric, you have a min and a max. So you can put in your scales if it's a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale or a 5-point scale, whatever your minimum is, whatever your maximum is. You can put that information there. Decimal points aren't relevant at this point. And then that's what it looks like. You click on Submit, and that's what your scale, give it a description so that you can distinguish which standard it is. And then you have to put in your conversions. You're going to click on get the scale. Take that out. I'll make sure you can see this. And then you want to give a description. So it's looking for information to tell it what this grade level is, what the cutoff values are, and then what the grade values are associated with each one of the values. So when we're talking about cutoff values, that's the final calculated percentage that the students must meet or exceed in order to get that grade as a final grade. And then, so this is your minimum, if you will. So thinking about that, and Sarah, you may jump in at any point, your students have a grade of M. What's the minimum grade that student can receive to receive that grade? And then on the grade value, what is the display that will use for the calculation in the grade book? So, and this is, for those that are coordinators, this is very similar to what you did when you were setting up your grade book, your grade scales during conversion. This can be a 4, 3, 2, 1 cutoff value, but you want to think about those and work with your curriculum staff to make sure that those cutoff values are appropriate for what they're wanting to achieve as far as a result. So again, you can add different, so you go through and add each one, add the different labels. And you also have to create a grade scale to go along with that. So clicking on System from the Start page, you have to also create a grade scale that also mimics that information. Let's back up just a second. And I don't think that's in here. That's what it looks like there once you get everything in. So you set up your conversion scale, and then you also have to set up a grade scale in the same area. So under LEA Setup, under LEA, under Grading Functions, I have standards, and I'm sorry, grade scales as well. So I have to create a grade scale to go along with a conversion scale. So my conversion scale is the information that I need to go on my spreadsheet. So once I have that done, I need to find out what that grade scale information contains. So I go back to System, and then I go to DDE. Once I get to DDE, I have to select the appropriate table. In this case, it's a standard conversion scale. So I go to the Gen table, and then in my selection criteria, I'm going to choose the catalog and select CAT equals, go back one, CAT equals standard conversion scale, STD scale. And then I'm going to search all the records. And it's going to give me however many scales that I have set up in my district. So I click on LEA View, and you'll find that scale. That's the one that I created earlier. So you need to write down this number, and that's the number that you need to take and put it back into your column I in your spreadsheet. And that tells the standards-based standards what grade scale to use when it's importing all the information and what grade scale to tie everything to, or conversion scale.
Okay, what we'd like to do now is stop for a moment and see if you have any questions. Again, with the spreadsheet, there are several columns that we at the department have filled in for you, and then there are columns that are filled in but you need to modify. You have to modify column G with your courses. Those have to be the specific courses at your local level that you want the standards to apply to. The conversion scale is something that you're going to have to create based on your grading scale, and that's in collaboration with your C&I staff. That has to be created, and then that scale ID number has to be found and input it into the spreadsheet. You have to determine if you want to allow assignments. That's true if you do, false if you don't. We've already set things for true. If you want to change those to false, that's fine. Include comments. If you want teachers to be able to put comments in for those standards so that they can be seen later by parents or anyone else, or actually printed on the report card, that's something that you can do as well, true or false. Description, full text of the standard, that's something you don't have to worry about. But the maximum length of a comment. So some of your comments, you may decide you don't want them to be too long. Others of you may not worry about that, so we did put a max length in there, but you can always change that if you like. And some of the decisions that you make will make more sense once you actually see it in the grade book, but we did want you to think about what these decisions were, because it does impact the grade book once you import the spreadsheet.
We do have, let's stop for a second. We do have a couple of questions. You can find the PowerPoint and the spreadsheet on the ncsys.org website. On the front page, on the left side at the bottom, there is a link for standards-based grade book. And all of that information is there. This PowerPoint is there, and the PowerPoint can step you through the information. And they're asking to go back and show the DDE screens again.
Not everyone can see your whole screen as it appears. There's a couple of statements there.
Yeah, some people can't see the screen.
That was when you had the webinar panel up.
Ah, okay.
Okay. All right. Good.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
The gen table can only be seen when you're in LEA mode in DDE. Cannot be seen if you're in a school.
Okay, did everybody hear that? That was Melissa from the Support Center with the reminder. I'm going to repeat it one more time.
The gen table can only be seen when you're in the LEA. It cannot be seen when you're in the school. It's not part of the drop-down table.
Get more questions?
Do you want to go over this? Yeah.
So John, do you need us to step through this? This is the same information in the PowerPoint. Side of your screen. Okay. Black box. Just a second. Let me scroll down. Just trying to find his. Just want to know if cat equals. Just want to know if cat equals. Cat equals STD standard conversion scale. That's what he needed. STD CONV SCALE. Okay, so a couple of questions here. Get back up to the top. Can we have the standards organized by college and career readiness anchor standards?
Michael, if you'll explain your question in a little more detail. Are you talking the standards themselves in the spreadsheet? You don't like the way it's laid out in the spreadsheet, or how? What, I'm not sure of your question.
Okay, so let me see if I can find Michael. Maybe we can
Unmute him.
Yes. Michael?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you're unmuted.
Okay. We would like to have them organized by the anchor standards. For example, instead of having separate reading literature or reading nonfiction, there's still some things in there such as the key ideas and details. We want them organized at that level, so regardless of what type of text you're reading, all your standards are still together for that, for those pieces, key ideas and details.
Oh, okay. Yes, in the spreadsheet, we've given you kind of a basis to start, but you can go in and you can arrange that in any order that you like. If you don't like the way we've arranged it, you can arrange it differently. I'll talk to our staff and see if there's a way that we can arrange it differently and have different arrangements in the spreadsheet, but it's probably going to be faster for you to do it at this point because the staff that was doing those arrangements has been pulled off this.
I think we're still seeing the black screen.
Okay.
Red button.
How's that?
There we go.
Oh. Okay. Someone, we apologize that you couldn't see the screen. I think, can you see it now? Michael, is that better? Michael?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You still muted?
Is that better with the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't post that comment, but I'm missing the right-hand third of the screen. It's black.
It still is it better now?
Now it's just a small portion at the top right, and I can see the majority of the screen, yes.
Okay. Okay, so in the spreadsheet, you might want to, there are some things that you will need to manipulate, but I think if you can look at the process that we went through to do the different standards, if you feel comfortable, I think you can probably manipulate it so that it shows up the way you would like to. You just have to think about the sort order. And Michael, which district are you with?
I'm with Greene County Schools.
Greene County, okay.
Okay.
Work with your team and see if you can manipulate that spreadsheet and then let us know.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to put you back on mute. Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
We have other questions. The black box, right screen. Okay, show the DVD. Want to make sure are the directions. There were a couple of, okay. What grading scales, okay, I would like to know what other districts are doing, what grading scales for standards-based.
Okay, is there anyone from Durham on the call? If you have a particular scale that you're using and you'd like to share with the rest of the team, if you would raise your hand, we'll unmute you. In particular, we're looking to see if Durham's on the line. I know we had a conversation about that earlier this week.
I don't see Durham on the line. I don't see Coke. Yeah, so one of the points she's asking too is we said numeric, but the slide said alphanumeric. You can choose whichever scale that you want, whichever best suits what you want to do.
Yeah, so Roz was talking about the numeric, and she kind of talked through that one, but the slides do say alphanumeric, so she was giving you two different examples. We do have someone who used to work in Wake who used standard-based grading, and she can share with you what Wake used last year.
They have been using a 1 to 4 scale with 1 being that very bottom level where students did not understand the standard. 2, the level 2 was that students understood the standard but needed a lot of teacher support. Level 3 was a proficiency score. We knew that if students were at a level 3, they understood the standard. And then at a level 4 was our going above and beyond. It was not doing more work, but it was showing how you could use the standard in a unique way outside of what we've been learning in the classroom. But it was very well defined when we were using it, and that's something that's going to be very important and a conversation you're going to have.
Okay. Anyone else that has a scale they'd like to share? Again, if you'll raise your hand, we can unmute you, or if you want to type it in if you don't have access to your speaker. Okay. And if not, we'll keep going.
Hold on, somebody raised a hand. Let me. don't see her. Okay, looks like an error hand. Can changes be made after the spreadsheet is imported? Will we have to go through the process again? You can import updates after you have created the import, and we'll get to that in just a second. There are a couple of settings on the import screen that you'll have to check to make sure if you're going to overwrite your standards. So let me just make sure that we've got all of the questions, and we will go back and continue on. Comment. Oh, Durham is here.
Okay.
This is Dana. Dana?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You are unmuted.
Yeah, we are using the same scale 321, similar to the 4321 scale, and we're also using a non-academic scale for CS&R consistently for non-academic behaviors so that we can be true standard-based grading.
Okay, so Durham has said something really important, and that is that you can have more than one scale, and they have a non-academic one, and then they have an academic one.
I also have some questions with the importing and changing that spreadsheet, if you all get to that later on.
Okay.
Okay, on what needs to be. We did it before, and only the changes were reflected, but I'm not quite sure about that. So.
Okay. I'm going to put you on mute for now, Dana.
Thank you.
Okay. Last question before we move on. Let's see, one or two. Is there a scale that matches the 5 achievement levels for EOGs, EOCs?
You could choose to do a 5-point scale if you would like to match EOCs and EOGs. That's a local decision.
So in other words, they can customize the scale to match the 5.
Yes, we won't be providing one from the state level.
Okay. Is there a way to see the final output of the report card? We see the one in the home-based PowerPoint. Is this an accurate reflection of the final standards-based report card?
There was a screenshot of a report card, the standard-based report card, in a PowerPoint presentation that you may have seen recently. We have asked the vendor to make some changes after talking with Hope County and with Durham County, and so that's not an accurate reflection anymore.
Okay.
And I think Greene County says that their standard scale is very similar to what Wake is using.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. So we have our information that we need to put into column I. So we go back to our spreadsheet and we put in our conversion scale. And we need to say that the way the spreadsheet is currently configured, you have multiple tabs that correlate to each subject area. And in order to do the import, you can do it one of two ways. So you can import each content area separately, or you can combine them into one spreadsheet. But when the upload happens, it only looks at the first tab in your spreadsheet. So if you're going to upload them individually, you need to save them off as separate files. Or you can combine them into one file or one on one tab, save that. But you want to make sure that when you're saving it, you save it as a text tab delimited file, and you're ready to import. So the process of importing is not very hard. So from your start screen, you're going to click on Special Functions, and you're going to click on Quick Import, and then select your table where you're going to do the import. So we're going to choose the Standards table. We're going to map our fields. So we'll ask you to suggest a field map. And also make sure that you point to where the file, the location of the file to be uploaded. So it's going to suggest the information that needs to be uploaded. But you want to review that information and make sure that everything is correct. Let's go back one slide for just a second. So you notice here that some of the fields are not checked. You want to review this information and make sure that what you are importing is coming into the, because I see a couple things here. And I believe because we have filled in the information, you would see additional information show up in your import for the map. For example, the sort order, we have the courses, and I believe we had the allow assignments and that kind of information is in our spreadsheet. So this is the basic information that has to be there for the import to come in. You also want to make sure that little box at the bottom that says check to exclude the first row if you have column headings. And also if you are updating your standards, so if you have imported information already, the last part at the bottom is the advanced import options. If you check this box, it is to overwrite what already exists. If you don't check that box, it does not overwrite anything. Well, on the first import, there's nothing to overwrite, so there's no need to check the box on the first import. And let me, Dana, I'm going to unmute you because I think this is where you were saying.
Yeah, if you don't check it, it will actually find the changes. So it keeps everything the same and then just add the changes that you've done, which is great.
Okay.
But my question also is with the spreadsheet itself, if I have the unique identifier is what distinguishes everything. Right. As far as the standard. So if I had a standard and I just want to change the way the standard name is, keeping everything the same, is that doable in the spreadsheet? Will it hurt anything?
It won't hurt anything.
Okay, because some of the language, we want it more friendly for parents and such? Okay.
Yes, you can change the language for the description if you'd like and make it more user-friendly, and that is the information that the parents would see and that would be on that report card, and so you're welcome to do that.
Okay.
We didn't want to do the user-friendly language because some districts may not like that, so we said, okay, let's just truncate it where the standard ends, and then we'll kind of go from there. But you're welcome to change that column.
Sarah, do you mind if I interject here for just a moment?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think when we're doing the advanced and we're clicking that to overwrite, typically if you decide to maybe change either access to a standard at the teacher level or comment or something like that, that's when you would want to overwrite because you want to make changes to what's already existing in the system.
Okay.
And Dawn, since you're on the line, would you like to tell about your standard grading scale that you're using in Hope County? A couple of
Sure, we just met about that. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, we just met about it earlier this morning. Our grading scale is M for mastery, P for progressing, LP for limited progress, and WA is with assistance, meaning the student is well below grade level and almost needs one-on-one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so questions. Next slide. So you're going to upload the information, and it just says file is uploading. If you have errors, you should see them. It will tell you here on the screen, and then you can go back and look at the information or adjust information as you need. We did find, just in some of our testing, a lot of our problems centered around the fact that we didn't have the correct course codes. So the course code exercise as you're preparing is very crucial to make sure you have the right information and that you have added your extensions to the state course code so that everything matches exactly. And we found that when we went back and that we had the right courses associated in some cases with the correct teachers so that they get the standards uploaded into their grade book. and it was, I think, fairly painless. I would defer to, see if I can get my audience, I would defer to Durham.
For the upload of the standards?
Yes.
Yeah, that was seamless. That was not a problem at all.
And Durham has been testing this for us to make sure that the standard spreadsheet works. Also has had a chance to preview the standard-based report card, so it is in QA right now. Also, Hope County actually implemented a standard-based report card last year through Power School. They were, I think, the only district in North Carolina to do so. They actually were on the cutting edge. They kind of went out on their own, learned it themselves, created their own template, and actually moved forward. And so, Dawn, if you want to share any information about that experience, you're welcome to do that. We also want to thank Dawn and the folks in Hope County for providing actually some of the slides that we're using today. They actually did a standard-based report card lab at the NCY, or the Power School Home-Based Symposium back in February, and some of the slides are from that deck. They're also available on the SIS website so that you can use it as you're importing your spreadsheet.
Okay.
Any questions or comments?
Let me look at questions. See where we stand. So that's what your screen looks like as you're importing. And as Dana said from Durham, not very complicated. Look at questions. Screenshot. Report card be ready by the end of the first 9 weeks for traditional calendar schools.
The goal is to have the report card available as soon as possible. Right now, the anticipated release date is the end of August. The developer is working on some changes, but that will be contingent upon the amount of time it makes them to make the changes and us to QA it and make sure there are no other issues before we release it. So we do have to go through the QA process to look at that one more time. And I'll show you a kind of a timeline of where we have been since the beginning of July so that you can kind of see how long it takes us to get the information from Pearson, for our team to make sure it's QA'd, and then to get the districts to look at it with us, and then to get it back out. One's the question that I will ask for each of you to kind of type into your chat box for us, or in the questions box, is when do you need it? I know you need it today, but since you can't have it today, is August, the end of August, going to work, or do you need it sooner than that? Kind of let us know what your needs are. We know you also have to test it on your end as well.
This is a good question. So they're still responding to that one. Through this, we would like to have by mid-September, end of August, please, by year-round school.
Somebody doesn't need until January.
Report cards in September. No later than September 15th. Okay. Could we have an example to show the principals?
Yeah, we can work on getting you a nice screenshot of what the report card will look like. There are some different options that you have available, but we'll work on getting you a nice screenshot as soon as it gets QA'd, so you should have that in the next couple of weeks.
Question is, what about progress reports?
With progress reports, some folks are using the actual grade book and communicating information through the parent portal that way. If there's a district that is doing that, if you'd like to share that, or if someone on the support center would like to share information about that, if they have any information about it, that would be awesome.
Sarah, I can speak a little to that.
Okay.
We have used the progress report in the grade book. There is one there for the standards-based grading. However, we did decide we wanted something a little different, developed our own, but we have used that one, and so it worked well, just didn't exactly meet our needs. And it was fairly easy to do.
And if you need information on how that works, we can work with our support center and our tech writers to get you some information. So it looks like if we can at least get it by the end of August or September 15th, we're in good shape. So we're working again to get it by the end of August, but if not, we will push our developers to make sure they have it by the September 15th deadline that you're indicating.
So the question is, how will grades look in Power School for teachers, students, and parents prior to the new report card? So when you're in the grade book, you will have, so the standards are akin, if you will, to assignments. And Dana or Dawn from Hope, Dawn can also speak as well as to what parents see.
So, okay, in the gradebook, yes, the parents can see the standards. Actually, well, let me go back. The question was, what are the teachers seeing? And let me make sure I understand the question.
Okay, so when they've uploaded their standards in because they did the spreadsheet, they said, yes, we want to allow assignments, yes, we want to do comments. They're in the grade book. It's in the teacher's grade book. It looks beautiful the way they want it. They're just wondering what are they seeing before they can actually spit it out on a report card.
The teachers will see they have a standards drawer behind each assignment, and those standards are tied to the assignment. So it looks just like the grade book, but the teachers will actually assign a standard to an assignment or multiple standards to an assignment. So the grade book essentially looks the same. There's just an extra layer now that there are standards there.
Yeah, and if we can show it to you, we'll try to do that.
Yeah, there's a student view also, so that it just, if you can imagine a spreadsheet just with the standards and the assignment and a score.
Yeah, so the teacher will be able to, when they're creating an assignment, they will be able to attach standards to it. So there'll be a drop down that can attach whichever standards go to that particular assignment. They can also make comments about that standard, whether the student is meeting it or not meeting it, how well they're doing on that particular standard, and then they can put all that information into their grade book. It's just there won't be the report card behind it that will capture that information and do a summary.
And I have another question. I want Deanne Meadows, I want to unmute you so you can speak to your question. Deanne, can you hear me? Okay, let me go ahead. I don't hear her. Let me go ahead and ask her question. She wants to verify that you can do this for a grade level versus an entire school. I guess, and hopefully I'm not putting words in her mouth. So let me rephrase this. Are you asking, can you do standards-based grading for a grade level? Can it be done by a grade level, or does it have to be done for an entire school? And Deanne, if you can hear me, did I rephrase the question correctly?
Okay. And then
We'll take the yes, such as K2 instead of K5.
Okay. And in Hood County we only use it for K2.
And was there more than just K2 at that particular school, Dawn?
Yes, we have K5 schools, and we are only using it for our kindergarten through second grade classrooms.
Okay, and so correct me if I'm wrong. So when you were looking in the spreadsheet, you only used those course code numbers that went with those standards for that particular grade level.
Yeah, last year they were all the same, but this year we're only using it for our kindergarten through second. So we will only be using for the course codes that go along with kindergarten through second grade. That's correct.
So in the spreadsheet, when you see the spreadsheet, we put the standards for all the grade levels, pretty much every subject.
Right.
So when you go to mathematics, you'll see K through 8 in one spreadsheet, and then you'll see the high school ones in another tab. If you're only using K through 2, you only want to use those K through 2 standards, and then using those particular courses that you're using in your particular district. So
okay.
that you can manipulate it in any way that you want in that spreadsheet. What we did was we put everything in there so that it would be more usable across the entire state than just one district.
Would Hope County be willing to share their standard report card just to look at? I have a principal that wants to make a decision, that won't make a decision until she sees the report card.
Polk County would be willing to share, and even not just to look at. We'll send the file. We don't have a problem sharing it all.
Dawn, can you all put it out on the North Carolina Exchange?
Yes.
Wonderful. Our school bit begins on August 19th. Will the grade book with the standards-based grading be available then?
Yes, if you take and if you do your spreadsheet and you upload your standards, they will go into your grade book. The report card itself will not be available at that point, but you can actually load the standards in. You can make all the decisions. If you've made all the decisions about grading, all that has to be communicated to your teacher. So if you already have done that upfront work, you will be ready to go. But if you haven't even thought about it yet, then the answer would be you probably won't be ready by August the 19th, because there's a lot of discussion that you have to have with your community about standard-based grading, a lot of decisions that need to be made before you embark on this endeavor. And I would like for other districts that have been doing it for many years, if they'd like to share some information about standard-based grading. It's not something you just do overnight. Dawn, since you're unmuted, if you want to share. Or anyone
I would concur. It's a really big undertaking. Certainly, if you haven't kind of made that step in that direction, it's there's a lot of conversation that has to happen prior to making this decision.
Since we're okay.
And comment from the field is that we have been working on this since January.
Oh, awesome. So if you've been working on this since January, that's great. You've probably got your community behind you. You've already got your grading scale. You've got everything that you need. Now you just need it to work in PowerSchool. So you have the spreadsheet. We wanted to make sure you got the spreadsheet as soon as possible, because there's a lot of work that you can do in the spreadsheet to make sure it looks right in your grade book, make sure you can make some decisions about your scale and the conversions that you're going to be using. There's a lot of things that you can do before the report card is available. So we wanted to make sure that you had that. Also, some of you attended the lab that we had at the symposium. You've been on the other webinars that we've had. You had the practice spreadsheet that we gave out last year. So some of you are very familiar with this. It's really just the new spreadsheet that's new to you. On the website, we also have the specifications for the report card. So for your district that is thinking about this, you can also look at the specifications. And we'll go to that in just a moment, so you can see what those look like for the report card. But I did want to talk to you a little bit about next steps. One thing that you'll have to do is think about your standard scale and what your conversions are going to be, what those values will be. So those are some things that you really need to think about before the PowerSchool folks start entering it in. Determine what will be reported. For example, are you going to do academics and behavior, or just academics with the standard-based grading? How is that going to occur? You heard from Durham County this earlier today that they're doing both, the non-academic and then also the academic. Determine what standard levels will appear on the report card. Again, different things that you have to think about. What's going to show in the grade book? How are you going to calculate your final grades? What are some policies around those final grades? There's going to be a lot of questions that your parents have about how grades were calculated, so you have to be prepared to answer those. Again, the conversion scale is also an issue that you'll have to kind of think about. Let me give you an update on the standard-based report card, since we have answered a couple of those questions. On July 3rd, Pearson did provide us the standard-based report card for feedback. We did go through and look at that. Durham and Hoke got a chance to look at the feedback and give us feedback on it July 25th and 28th. So it took us between July 3rd to the 25th to do our QA, make sure everything was working appropriately, for Durham and Hoke to be involved in the conversation and give us some feedback on it. The standard-based report spreadsheet was released on July 28th. Between the 28th and late August, the revisions are being made to this report card. It's being tested. The documentation is being created, and we anticipate releasing it at the end of August. And so our folks that are working on some of the documentation are shaking their heads, saying, yes, that's what we're working on. That's good confirmation. We have also included in our spreadsheet just some information about calculating grades, that once you get the spreadsheet that you can talk about with your staff members. And Dawn, if you're on the line, we did use these from your particular PowerPoint that you did at the conference, at the symposium, and then you've also gone around the state to talk about them. But basically, when you're putting in your standards, you know, you might give a student might have a 2, a 3, a 3, a 3, and a 4. Are you going to average those and get a mean score, or are you going to do something else? There's lots of decisions that you have to make around standard-based grading because you're not actually doing the norm here. Then the second one here that you might want to do, rather than doing an average, you might say, well, we want to take the one that occurred, the median score, so you go 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4. Doesn't matter if 4 was the highest at the very end or if it was the one at the very beginning. The 4 could have been the very first one, and then they went and looked, and you said, okay, they went to a 3, 3, 3, and then a 2. The 2 could have been the most recent one. It doesn't matter what order it was in. What you do is do the lowest one to the highest, and you're going to take that middle score. So that's the median. So if that's what your district wants to do, and that's the decision you make, that's what you would do. That's what would be communicated to your teachers. That's how it would be set up in the grade book and also for the scoring, and that's the way you would get your final grade. That's how you communicate it out. Other options that you have available, you could say, well, we want the one that's the most frequent. So, for example, if you had a 2, you had 3 3s, and a 4, you may say 3 is the most frequent one. That's the one that we're going to use. That might be your decision. Now, there might be a case where you have your bimodal. You might have 2 modes. PowerSchool doesn't really handle bimodal too well, and so you really want to think about how PowerSchool handles it, because what PowerSchool is looking for is one number. They're not asking for 2. So if you have a 3 occurred 2 times and a 2 occurred 2 times, the system's not going to know what to do with that information. So you have to kind of think about that. You may decide you want to do the highest one. You have the 2, the 3, the 3, the 3, and the 4. The highest one that you want to go with, you might want to do that. And then lastly, you might want to say, I want to use the most recent, or you might want to do a combination. This one shows if you do the most recent, it's going to be a 4, but then if you say we want to do the 3 most recent and then take the average, you could do that as well. So you have to kind of think about all these components as you're thinking about the grading and how you want this to be handled. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a follow-up webinar just to talk about grading so that you can have some things to think about, and we'd like for the districts to share what they're thinking about in terms of how they're going to be grading, whether they're using the most recent, whether they're using the most recent and the average, if they're going to do the median, what kinds of things they're going to do with their grading, so that it can inform other grading practices as well, and then how PowerSchool or PowerTeacher handles that information. And so I'm going to open it up there for additional questions, and before we do additional questions, Dawn, if you'd like to add anything to this discussion, we really would appreciate you adding, since you're the district that implemented it last year with PowerSchool.
I would say in fact, we had a conversation again about how we were calculating and just making sure we felt good about it. We do most recent, but we also don't just do a straight average. Basing it off, research is that we should give credence to the most recent scores. So we've actually even weighted. So our most recent is 50% of that small average, and then our next most recent is 30%, and then that third most recent is 20%, and we do that because we think that last score is really, really important. So it's a little complex, but we want to make sure that we are doing what's in the best interest of and what preserves this standards-based grading idea.
I also wanted to have Durham talk about what they're thinking about, because I know they're thinking about doing it a little bit differently. Durham?
Yeah, it's been a lot of conversation, and Don, that's interesting what you just said with the most recent and the next most recent, because that's what the teachers were concerned about. But we are doing most recent, and from the most recent, we're averaging. That's what we've ended with, but that's not where we might stay.
Okay. And then did you decide what was most recent, like the 3 most recent, 4, 5? Did you?
We're doing the 3, and it depends. We have performance tasks. So it depends, though, standards that are part of that performance task. So if it's 2 standards, 3 standards, or what have you, then it would be the most recent of that standard. And those standards then will be averaged.
Okay.
I did have one more question I didn't get to earlier. Would there be a benefit to uploading all standards, even though standards-based report cards would only be printed for K2?
If you wanted your teachers to have the ability to align your resource, the standards to an assignment, they could do that, and then they could also make comments in their grade book about how students are doing on the standards. It would be additional information for the teachers. It would also be additional information for them as they're communicating with parents. And so it would be an option for teachers to use. It's not going to hurt the grade book if you add them in. And so it would be fine if you decided to do that. I did want to make one comment about the spreadsheet. We have all the standards in for K5, except for the K8, except the extended content standards. Those are still under review, and those will be out as soon as they're finished going through the QA process. But you'll see all the ones except extended content standards for K through 8. We also did not put any OCS standards in because they felt like doing those at the high school level for OCS wouldn't necessarily be necessary for standard-based report carding. It might be interesting for them to do for just communication purposes, as we mentioned earlier, but for standard-based report cards, they did not feel that was needed. We also did not put in the ESL or WIDA standards because they felt like that wasn't needed for standard-based grading either. And so you'll see some that are not there, but for the most part, you'll see them there. And you could upload the entire spreadsheet if you want it. You just have to make sure you adjust the course code numbers, the scales, etc.
Just run through real quick and just make sure I haven't missed any questions.
Rosalind, while you're looking, I have a question. Regarding the spreadsheet and the course number, I think Sarah mentioned that you do not have to indicate the course number. Is it true that if the course number is on the spreadsheet that it must match a course number that's in PowerSchool in order for it to be imported correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're not using, you do have to look at that column and make some decisions, because if it's not there, it's going to give you an error.
We have resource and parens art, music, PE that need to be included on the report card. Is any district including them on a K-5 report card via PowerSchool?
Yes.
Anybody?
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that, okay. Would you like to tell them how you're doing that on the report card?
We are doing a traditional and standards-based report card together. So it will show those traditional scores at OSNU, the normal SNU, and then also the standards-based.
We have the same.
Okay. And so even on the standard-based report card, if you do standard-based report card, you could actually have traditional grading on there as well. It's just that with the traditional report card, you will not have the standards, the way the new report card is set up. And so we're going to go to the website in just a moment and show you where the specifications are for the report card.
You want to let me present it?
I'm changing presenters to raw, so you'll probably see a black screen. She's going to show you where it is on the website. And the other support documents are there as well.
So from the NCSIS website, I'll be on the way. So at the bottom left panel, I'm clicking on standards-based report card. This is the PowerPoint that we have been referencing today, the first item. The standard spreadsheet is the second item, and I believe, I need to verify with the team, I believe we have a correction that we need to upload. So let me get that new one uploaded, and also we'll put two versions out here. We'll put the Excel version that has all the tabs, and then we'll put a text tab delimited that has everything in one, so that you have the different options there. And then the specifications here is the third option. bring it up.
Yeah, let me explain what the correction will be for that spreadsheet. One thing that we found when we were importing it and then having the descriptions show up on the report card, there were some funny bubble characters because what it did was take the 3 dots that we put in for characters 78, 79, and 80. It was changing that to 1 character, and it came out looking a little funny. And so we did go back in to make sure that it was just 3 dots, and then we'll make that note when we post it.
There we are.
Okay, excellent.
So as we navigate through, is there something particularly you want to know?
Yeah, just at the back, at the bottom, there's the Hope County example. Go up. Okay, what we did was we worked with several districts to talk about what the specifications needed to be for the report card that we passed on to Pearson. And so, I don't know if we can increase the
Try here.
Hope County was nice enough to share with us their report card that they had, and we gave that to them as an example. The one that we will have through Power School will be very similar. This is through ReportWorks when they created theirs. And so you can see on this one, you'll see the standards and the comments that teachers have made about the standards, and then it also has a summary score or summary grade for that reporting period. They have a P or an M over in the reporting period column. You can see the identifiers there as well. What we've indicated to Pearson and what they have accomplished is you can determine whether you want the identifier to show or not, so that dot notation doesn't have to show on the report card. You can also determine whether you want to have the, all the standards appear, only the ones that have grades, or none of the standards to appear. So for example, in art, if you don't want the standards to appear, you wouldn't have to have the standards appear. So you can kind of mix the report card up a little bit. I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but if you go to the website, you'll actually get to see what all the specifications are that we asked Pearson to meet, and for the most part, they've met all of them, and then the sample of Hope County's report card that they used last year. Yeah, I think it's getting bigger.
So that's okay. So that's a little better. Can't get it all on the same screen. Like.
Durham, can you give us any other things that you had any difficulty with in terms of uploading the spreadsheet, or any advice for the folks on the call?
We're still in testing mode. The spreadsheet we played with to see what outputs we would get when uploading. So we had a couple of our own standards that we were messing around with, and just creating a unique identifier to upload our spreadsheet so to see if it would work or output with the regular standards. So a lot of playing around with it.
Okay.
But the upload was very seamless. That wasn't the big deal. It's just a lot of background information, like Dawn said, that we have to get together prior to doing that, the logistics.
Okay. Yeah, that conversion skill is important too. And that takes a lot of conversation.
And I'd like to remind everyone as well that there are videos on PowerSource for standards-based grading to set up pieces that you can review. I just want to remind everyone that that resource is still available to you.
Dawn, anything that you would like to say about manipulating the spreadsheet in any way? Because I know you had to create your own spreadsheet last year.
Yes, and I will be manipulating the spreadsheet that we have for this year. I think, my philosophy is we're going to make it work for us and our needs. So I don't want to be ruled by the spreadsheet. So really, I think, you can't break the spreadsheet. If you do, go out and get it back and pull it in again. But you really can manipulate it to do exactly what you need it to do, and that's what we're doing. We are manipulating it so that it's going to act in PowerSchool the way we want it to. So I think just, playing with it, I think, and looking at the different scenarios is really the best way to do it. So because it's coming out very soon, the updates, I would say get your hands on the spreadsheet and start looking at it first.
Dawn, I had a question about what I'm looking at on you guys' report card, and under the course column, did you guys just type that in as fixed text when you were creating the report card, or did you put it in as the standards and change the description names?
The course came actually from the course label in PowerSchool.
Okay.
We do have a couple other questions. Let's get back to them. And actually, I know who asked the question, so I'm going to unmute him. Dave? Dave, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. If you
All
go
right.
ahead and ask your question.
The question really is, I understand that you can, in a regular 3 through 8th grade kind of classroom, you would put in an assignment and then attach the standards to it and then put those grades in. How would you do it in our K2 classrooms where there's not necessarily going to be an assignment that says, homework page 3? If I wanted to identify some of those standards, do you create an assignment and then attach multiple, an assignment that isn't really an assignment, and call it, English Standard 1, and then rate those just one time in there? How would you make that work?
Hold on one second.
There's thinking going on in the room.
Well, I think you can do it. It doesn't have to be graded. So you can put things, you have the ability in Gradebook to manipulate it to anything that you want it to be, and it doesn't necessarily have to be graded or go to a report card. But yes, just that. You can call it what you just called it and attach the standards as such.
And then if we just put onto it, 1 through 4 scale or a, SNU scale, whatever scale you want, and then whatever the one thing they put in there, just have that be the one that prints on our report card.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do it one of two ways. Like you said, we can do data points, and which is what we call it, data points, where there's observation, those type of things, because they're not paper pencil assignments, but we do have them record data in the gradebook. Or you can simply do it end of term, or if you will, in terms of that standard. So you can actually just assign a score to that standard without actually putting one assignment in the gradebook.
Okay. That would make sense. If I could follow up with that real quick, looking at that report card, I see you have the standard one that's out there. I see it's kind of planned, at least in that sample, for 9 weeks. Are you doing something for 6 weeks? Is it going to pull our grading terms out of PowerSchool? How's that going to work?
Yes, it pulls your grading terms right out of PowerSchool. So whatever your term is, we told it to print for Q1, Q2, so whatever your terms are called, it'll pull from PowerSchool.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Putting Dave back on mute.
And Dave, you could even call it observation 1, observation 2. It doesn't have to be like an assignment.
Yeah, I assumed it would work that way. I just wanted to verify and make sure. We're trying to figure out if we want to go with this over in essence, our K2 report card, which is a standard, locally created standard-based report card.
Gotcha.
Okay, let me put him back on mute. Christina is asking, is this like the traditional report card where you choose how many columns you want each grading period?
Yes, it is. And so you have the option to show how many grading periods you want each time, and there's going to be a lot of different runtime options. And so when you go through the specifications, you'll see that we asked the developer to have up to 9 that you can choose from, and they've accomplished that. So it would be very similar to the traditional one.
I don't see any other if you have a question and we didn't get to it, either verbally or written, if you type it in, again, so that it will show up at the bottom.
Yeah, we're at the end of the webinar. We've got about 15 minutes left. If you have a question or a comment, if you'd like to type it in, that would be wonderful.
This question, do the standards need to be uploaded before teachers access their gradebook?
Ideally, it's nice so that they can actually start doing their grading. But if not, you'll have to let them know when they will be there so they can actually start doing the standards-based grading. And what they should do in the interim.
September, end of August, have it available, November, September, we have a copy. So Hoke is going to post their copy in the Exchange.
And we're going to get a screenshot copy that we can share with you for the DPI Pearson.
Okay. That looks, no questions there, no questions there. This question answered. Can you attach a standard after you create an assignment?
Yes.
You would simply have to go into that assignment and edit, and you'd have to go over to the standards tab, but you can always edit that standard or that, excuse me, that assignment to add standards.
And that's Shannon Hickman.
Okay, that was it. I don't see more.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
Is there a way, if you're teaching, say you're a kindergarten teacher and you've been using gradebook all this last year and you wanted to copy the assignments from last year's gradebook over to this year's gradebook, is there a way to do that?
Yes, you can do that.
Yay.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. And then you just need to know how.
I think we'll get back to the same answer.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to hang out here for a few more minutes if you have questions, but for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and effort. We actually, before you leave, we wanted to do another webinar to talk about just the grading and look at the gradebook and how everything looks in the gradebook. If you could type into the chat box or into the questions box when you think would be a good time, when you would need that particular webinar, if you need it sooner rather than later, if we needed to do something next week, or if we could hold off until the first of the next week, we would like to do that. Let us know. We're here to help you be successful.
And I'm going to unmute Rhonda so she can ask her question. Rhonda?
Rhonda? You're unmuted.
Okay. I got a lot of responses coming in real quick.
Yeah,
Will further directions be available during the web conference? And I wasn't sure what she meant by. Oh, no sound. Sorry. Okay. It says no sound. Can't talk.
Yeah, Rhonda, if you could give us just a little more information about what you were asking, what kind of directions you need during the webinar.
I don't understand the week of August 11th was assigned.
August 11th, okay.
So while Rhonda's typing, there's another question. If after the initial upload of the spreadsheet, we make changes to the spreadsheet and upload it again, will the changes that were made modify the standards that were attached to assignments? Okay.
Yeah, what impact does uploading the spreadsheet again have on the assignments that were already there and already tagged? And Dawn, I think you're the only one that has gone through that. I don't know if we've done that in our QA.
I can tell, yes, we upload it multiple times and after the teachers had already been in the grade book. And so it depends on what kind of changes you made. Where if you make changes where it's their course, it will pull it out of their grade book in terms of them being able to access it. But what's already there stays there. If it's in terms of moving it around, maybe the level, then it just moves it around as far as what they see, but it actually doesn't change what's attached to the assignment. As long as that identifier stays in that course, it stays there. So I'm not sure what kind of modifications, but if you say the teacher can no longer comment on it, then it takes that away, but it doesn't unyoke the assignment with the standard.
That's good to know.
So the comment, if they had commented before, the comment would go away, or would it stay?
It goes away, but it doesn't really go away. In other words, if I put it back, they can see it again.
Right. Okay.
Because I had to do that too.
Do they get upset with you?
So too, I guess just to piggyback on that, to underscore the need to think about what you want to do prior to your import.
And then also, if you have a test environment, that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And Dawn, we might work with you on some of the scenarios that you encountered real time with your teachers and help with some documentation. I think that would be really fabulous.
So we just have a comment. So this district will not be implementing standards-based reporting until next year or later. Still trying to emphasize the amount of work to implement this. Would hope the discussions about marks be down early in 14-15 school year.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Captain Hill.
Last read areas.
I'm trying to work on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so any discussions that we have about the grading we'll do in the next couple of weeks, so you can have some time to think about it. If you're not implementing until even January or later, then that'll be really good for you to have that discussion. We'll try to record that particular one so that you can have access to it as well. I'm not sure if we were successful in recording this one.
Yes, it is
It is recorded.
It is recorded, yes.
Excellent.
So Rhonda's question, she was asking if this is going to be covered as part of the August 11-12 Power School Conference, so she'll know whether or not the full curriculum folks in. And it is not part of that that area.
It's not part of the Power School Conference, so you'll have to pull your folks here to the webinar that we do here, and we'll make sure the webinar does not conflict. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a great Friday, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
I'm going to leave the question panel up for just a few minutes. If you want to capture the questions that were answered, if you click on the file and then save the questions log, you'll see all the answers to the questions. We thank you for calling in.